Okay, let's dive in. You've pulled together some really interesting material here, all focused on a specific professional certification. The type often feels like just so much information when you're trying to figure out what it is or even where to start.
Absolutely. It's easy to get swamped, isn't it? You've got the official docs, study guides, advice floating around. It's
Yeah.
like trying to piece together a puzzle just to see the path forward.
Exactly, and that's what we're aiming to do with this deep dive. We're zooming in on the BICSI DCDC certification. That's the Data Center Design Consultant credential.
Right.
And our goal, really, is to use the specific source material you've shared, which kind of acts like a roadmap or maybe a beginner's guide to cut through all that noise.
Mm-hmm.
We're basically going to walk through your material step by step to give you a really clear picture of what the DCDC is, why this source says it's important right now, and the path it recommends for actually getting certified.
Yeah. Think of us as guides for the specific material you sent over. We'll highlight the key stuff, connect the dots for you, hopefully give you the core understanding without you having to wade through every single page yourself.
Perfect. So let's start right at the beginning. What is this certification? BCDC, BICSI.
Oh.
What does this material actually say it is?
Right. So the material spells it out pretty clearly. DCDC stands for Data Center Design Consultant.
Okay,
And it's a professional certification that comes from BICSI. That's the Building Industry Consulting Service International, a well-known name in the field.
got it. BICSI, DCDC. And what does getting this cert actually prove? What knowledge is it validating according to these pages you've shared?
Well, this guide says it shows you have a solid grasp on how to plan, design, and coordinate data center infrastructure.
Infrastructure. So like the physical stuff.
Exactly. It specifically lists things like structured cabling, how power is distributed, the cooling systems, security aspects, and even fire protection systems, the whole physical environment.
So it's really digging into that complex foundation, the building blocks that make a data center reliable, not just the servers,
Yeah.
but everything around them.
Precisely. Which leads us nicely to the why, doesn't it? Why does this material flag this particular certification as being so significant?
Yeah, what's the big deal according to this source?
This is a really key point in these pages. Data centers are basically painted as the absolute backbone of our digital world now.
Hmm.
Everything from cloud computing, web hosting, all that massive data storage, it all lives in data centers. And because demand for digital services is just exploding, companies are pouring huge amounts of money into making sure this infrastructure isn't just there, but it's super robust, super reliable, and designed correctly from the ground up.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that directly creates a big need for certified pros who actually know how to design these complex, mission-critical places.
Right, that connection is clear. The more we rely on digital stuff, the more crucial the physical infrastructure is,
Hmm.
and you need people who really understand how to build it right. So who is this certification generally aimed at based on this material?
The guide lists a few key groups. People already working in IT and network engineering, folks in facilities and infrastructure management,
Uh-huh.
even people in construction project management who are involved in building these things, or really anyone who's specifically looking to move into the data center design space.
So if you're listening and you're maybe in one of those roles or thinking about it, this material is basically saying this DCDC cert can help you show you've got specialized skills in a field that's, well, clearly growing and needs real precision. It sort of bridges different disciplines, doesn't it?
It really does. It helps establish a common baseline of knowledge across those different but related areas.
Okay, all right. Let's shift gears a bit. We've covered the what and why. How about the how? This roadmap you've got here suggests the first big step is getting the right study stuff together. What's the #1 resource mentioned in these pages?
Yeah, the material is super clear on this one. The official DCDC manual from BICSI is presented as the primary resource. It's basically the core textbook that the exam is built on.
Right, the official book. Makes sense. What kind of ground does this manual cover? What topics are listed in this guide?
It hits the key areas you'd expect. Things like site selection, where do you even put a data center? Also, cabling pathways and spaces, power systems, and critically, redundancy in power.
Okay.
Then cooling systems and managing airflow, which is huge. Fire protection and detection, and naturally, security and environmental monitoring, too. It aims to be pretty comprehensive on the physical side.
Wow, that sounds like a hefty book.
Yeah.
Does the material give any advice on how to actually tackle something that dense?
It does, yeah. It acknowledges it's a lot, but the strong advice is break it down, don't try to swallow it whole. The suggestion here is aiming for maybe 1 to 2 chapters per week and for making it stick. It really emphasizes tactics like using sticky notes, highlighting key sections, and this is interesting, taking handwritten notes.
Handwritten, really?
Yeah, this material specifically calls out that physical act of writing things down helps with recall. Kind of old school, but apparently effective according to this source.
Ah, interesting. The power of pen and paper still matters.
hmm
Are there any other resources these pages suggest using alongside the main manual?
Yep, it mentions a few supplementary things, like YouTube videos, especially for tricky concepts like power systems, how UPSs work, or different cooling strategies. Seeing visuals can really help there.
Sure.
It also suggests looking for online study groups or forums. Places like Reddit or Discord are mentioned, and using flashcards for drilling key terms, acronyms, standards, that sort of thing.
Okay, so that gives you a nice toolkit. The official manual is your base. Then add videos, community support, and flashcards for reinforcement. Makes sense. Now, how does this material suggest you actually structure the study process? Is there a recommended timeline?
It lays out a suggested time frame, framing it as a pretty focused 4 to 6 week study plan.
4 to 6 weeks, that sounds manageable.
Yeah, the guide suggests it's doable even if you have a full-time job. The big emphasis, though, is on consistency. It makes the point that studying for, say, 1 hour every single day is way more effective than trying to cram like 5 hours in just on a Saturday. Consistency beats cramming.
Right, steady progress. A 4 to 6 week plan. Can you walk us through the sample weekly breakdown that's provided in this material? How does it lay it out?
Sure. It breaks down like this. Weeks 1 and 2. You start with the foundational stuff. That's roughly the first half of the manual, maybe 3 to 4 chapters, covering things like site selection, cabling basics, design standards. The main goal here is just getting started with your notes and highlighting.
Okay, build the base.
Exactly. Then weeks 3 and 4, this is where you move into the more technical chapters, things cooling systems, fire suppression, redundancy concepts. And a key piece of advice here is to start doing practice questions after you finish each chapter in this phase.
Testing yourself as you go.
Right. It helps you spot your weak areas early on so you can go back and review them.
Smart. And the last couple of weeks.
Weeks 5 and 6. This is the final push, heavily focused on practice. The guide recommends taking 1 to 2 full-length practice exams during these weeks.
Full length, like simulating the real thing.
Yep. And the goal isn't just getting questions right. It's about focusing on timing, getting comfortable with that 2.5-hour limit, and, really importantly, reviewing every single wrong answer. You need to dig in and understand why it was wrong, what the correct concept is. This practice phase is highlighted as absolutely essential.
That structure feels very practical. You go from basics to deeper technical stuff, then you hone your application and timing with practice. It's a clear progression laid out in this roadmap.
It definitely provides a structured approach, yeah.
Speaking of practice and timing, let's talk about the actual exam. What does this material tell us about the format of the test itself? Key details.
Okay, so these pages give the specifics. It's a 100 multiple choice question exam.
Right.
You get 2.5 hours to do it. To pass, you need to score 70% or higher. And a big one. It's a closed book test. No manuals, no notes allowed in the testing center.
Okay, 100 questions, 2.5 hours, closed book. Definitely need to know your stuff and manage that clock. That reinforces why those study sessions and handwritten notes were stressed earlier.
For sure.
What about the style of the questions? Is it just recalling facts, or is it more involved?
Yeah, this material makes a pretty big point about this. It says it's not just rote memorization. The questions are described as being more conceptual or scenario-based.
Scenario-based, like what?
Well, it gives an example. Something like you might be asked about the most appropriate cooling system design for a data center that's located in a place with really high humidity.
Okay. So you have to apply the knowledge.
Exactly. The insight here seems to be that the exam is really testing your ability to take the principles from the manual and apply them to, realistic data center situations. It's not just knowing definitions, it's understanding the why behind different design choices in different contexts.
That makes a lot of sense for a design consultant role. You need to make decisions based on circumstances.
Precisely. That application piece is core, according to this guide.
Does the material offer any practical tips for actually taking the test? Strategies for test day?
It does, yeah. Some pretty standard but useful advice. Things like, don't overthink your first instinct too much. Try to eliminate the obviously wrong answers first on multiple choice questions.
Good tactics.
And use the flagging feature. If you hit a question you're really stuck on, flag it and come back later. Don't get bogged down. It also loops back to the practice exams, stressing the importance of practicing your pacing so you don't run out of time.
All good actionable advice for the pressure of test day. So, okay, you've done the studying, you've followed the plan, you've practiced. Next step is actually scheduling and taking it. How does this material say you do that?
According to these pages, the scheduling happens through the BICSI website. Pretty straightforward. And the exams themselves are delivered at Pearson VUE testing centers.
Ah, Pearson VUE. Yeah, lots of professional certs use them. Familiar process for many people.
Right. Standard, secure testing environment.
What about that final week, right before the exam date? What does this roadmap recommend for those last few days? Any specific focus?
The advice for the final week is basically light revision only. Go over your flashcards, maybe reread notes on key concepts you found tricky, or look again at topics you struggled with on practice tests.
So no cramming new stuff.
Definitely not. The strong recommendation is avoid trying to learn anything brand new right at the end. It's about reinforcing what you've already learned. It also suggests maybe doing one final mock exam early in that week, just to simulate the whole test day routine one last time.
That seems wise. Consolidate, don't introduce chaos. What about exam day itself? Any specific tips in the material for the actual day?
Yeah, some simple but important ones. Make sure you get a good night's sleep beforehand. Easier said than done sometimes, I know.
Do?
Eat a light meal before you go, nothing too heavy. Crucially, remember your valid ID. And arrive early at the test center. Give yourself plenty of time, avoid rushing and stress.
Good practical stuff.
And the final piece of advice is just try to stay calm and confident. Remind yourself you did the prep, you followed the plan.
Right. And, sometimes, despite the best plans, what if it doesn't go well the first time? Does the material address that?
It does, and it's quite encouraging, actually. It basically says, look, it's perfectly okay if you don't pass on your first try.
Yeah.
Yeah, it highlights that many professionals take it more than once. It's a tough exam. The key takeaway it offers is learn from the attempt, figure out where you went wrong, use that feedback, and prepare for the next try. Don't get discouraged.
That's a really important and realistic perspective to include. Good encouragement. Okay, let's shift to the positive outcome. What does this material say happens after you successfully pass the exam? What are the benefits?
Yes, the payoff. So, once you're officially a BICSI DCDC, this guide points to several potential benefits. Things like possibilities for promotion into specific data center design roles or infrastructure planning positions.
Nice.
It also mentions helping you secure contracts or consulting gigs if you're working independently in the data center space. And maybe most importantly, it talks about building significant credibility.
Credibility with who?
With clients, with your managers, with hiring teams. It signals you have proven specialized knowledge in this really critical and complex field.
So it can genuinely open doors for career advancement, new kinds of work, and basically establishes you as an expert.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Is it a certification you just earn once and you're set for life?
No. This material mentions the renewal requirement. BICSI makes you renew the certification every 3 years.
Every 3 years?
By earning continuing education credits, or CECs, so it's not a one-and-done thing. You have to stay active and keep your knowledge current.
Okay, so maintaining the credential means ongoing learning.
Exactly. Which, in a field like data centers that changes so fast, probably makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there we have it. We've essentially walked through the roadmap presented in the material you provided for the BICSI DCDC certification. We covered understanding what it is, why this source thinks it matters.
The study materials, how to tackle them, building that 4 to 6 week plan.
Right, getting familiar with the exam format, those scenario questions, and then the whole process of scheduling, taking it, passing it, and what comes after.
Yeah, we've tried to pull out the core insights and the step-by-step path from these specific pages you shared, hopefully giving you a structured overview, kind of a shortcut to navigating what this source recommends for this particular credential, all based on your material.
So let's leave you with a final thought to chew on, something that stems directly from what we just discussed, based purely on this material. Given that BICSI requires you to renew this DCDC certification every 3 years by earning continuing education credits, what does that requirement itself suggest about just how quickly data center design must be evolving?
Good question.
Think about areas like power efficiency, new cooling techniques for denser computing, evolving security threats. If you need constant education just to stay certified, what does that say about the pace of change? And how might you, thinking beyond just getting the initial certification, approach that need for ongoing learning to stay truly relevant and valuable in this incredibly dynamic world of critical infrastructure?